Welcome back to the Green Witch Homestead. Right smack in the middle of May. The rains have come, the garden is in, and it's looking beautiful, so come with me and let's do our first garden tour of 2023. One of the first things that I needed to work on in my garden space was the space for the gardener. It's very difficult to be out in your garden all the time if it's a chore. One of the big inspirations in my life, most of you probably know her, is Jessica Sowards from Roots and Refuge Farm. And she says all the time, make room for the gardener in your garden. Well, I had to work really hard on getting my space comfortable for me. We're still not quite completely there, but this is my new setup seeding area. I'm in the middle of planting the last little bits of seeds right now. But we've got our canopy up. I've got this big, beautiful elephant ear that I planted, and I've got a banana tree over in the other corner. It's quiet, it's peaceful. I love sitting under here, and the best part about this canopy setup is when I'm sitting down on this bench right here, I'm working on planting seeds or just enjoying my morning coffee. This is my view. So this is what I get to look at as I sit here in my canopy. Isn't it lovely? One of the other things that you're going to notice, we finally got ground cover. If you remember some of our garden tour videos last year, I was struggling a lot with the weeds in between this garden space because this area was reclaimed scrub area basically. And I've struggled with weeds between my garden rows for 4 or 5 years. We finally had the means last year to get proper ground cover, but nothing was available. So it was a big struggle, and we had to go one more year of dealing with the weeds. But this winter we were able to finally get proper ground cover. We still have not mulched it yet, mainly because I haven't decided on what I want to put down, if I want to do pea gravel or if I want to do wood chip mulch. No more weeds! Yay! Well, no more weeds in the walkways anyway. Looking back at the canopy seeding area, so we've got these two little beds here, which have some perennial flowers in this one and annuals in that one. And then I've got my big potted plants in there, and I've got it surrounded by my irises and lily garden, and we're going to put a little decorative pond right over there. But this corner here is my wild corner. This originally started out as my herb garden, and it has been pretty much changed to being my raspberry and wildflower patch. The wildflowers really thicken up and kind of look to most people like a bed of weeds, but they actually help protect the raspberries from the birds so that I can actually harvest some of my raspberries. We do have more space in the garden this year. You can see we've put the fabric all the way in that front section where we have the roadside access. We're going to have some potted annuals in there each year. I can change them out. And then I have opened up this space here. We're going to be continuing that wall all the way down to the tree line just to keep the weeds here from growing up. We've got a whole new garden bed in right here. So we've got purple sweet potatoes growing in this new garden bed and some French breakfast radishes, just a little patch right there, as well as my coveted blueberry and cream cherry tomatoes from Wild Boar Farms. My green stalk planter on this side here has got a few mustard greens and kale plants in the bottom. I've got some basil and radishes planted in some of these tiers, and then I have some strawberries, which I'm actually excited because we're finally getting some strawberry blessings. Strawberries are one of those things that has been very difficult for me to grow. The plants themselves are amazing and beautiful, and then we get this kind of weather where it's a little bit rainy and misty and cool, and the plants just get devoured by the pill bugs. So moving them up into the green stalk, and then I have another set over in a little rock wall over there, has really helped, and I'm actually going to get a harvest this year, which is exciting. Moving over here to our 2 long rows, I've got the arch trellises covered with a shade cloth right now because these are my cabbage beds. Now, the reason the shade cloth is on is because we have already reached the point where majority of our days are hot, above 80 degrees, and cabbages and cauliflower are a cool weather crop. They don't like the heat, they don't like the direct sun, they'll get burnt out. So these guys are just finishing up. Growing brassicas here in the Midwest has been a little bit of a challenge. Where I grew up, you always start them earlier because they are a cool weather crop. They will get started earlier and then you harvest them before the heat of the summer comes. Here in central Missouri, the heat of the summer comes just a little too quickly. So we get these big, beautiful plants, and then just as they're about to start to head, the temperature jumps up into the 90s, and instead of heading, they bolt, or if they've already started heading, they burn. So this year, we've actually had a really good crop. I started a little bit earlier, and we decided, since I had the arch trellises here, I was going to go ahead and put the shade cloth over them. I've got it angled more to that side because that's the way the sun sets. So they get their nice morning sunlight, and then they're shaded through most of the day, and they're not getting hit with that harsh afternoon sun. Look at these beautiful, healthy cabbage plants. And these things are huge. Like, this is not even started to head yet. Some of these leaves are bigger than my head. But we've got several down this row. I've got cauliflower in there as well. These are my new banana trees. There's a different variety of cabbage that I have over here. I've got onions growing along the outside edge of each cabbage row. There's another banana there. And look, we had babies. And then again, these are the cauliflowers in here. We got a nice little row of spinach started on this side. So this is a good example to show you the difference. So this is a marketmore cabbage here, and this is a standard green heading cabbage or Dutch cabbage. So they are both healthy and big plants, but the size difference between the two is pretty neat. On the end of the cabbage row is my secret weapon. So if you don't know, this is Comfrey. This particular variety is actually German Comfrey. It does reseed itself. It is covered in these glorious flowers right now, and that's the main reason why I haven't harvested any yet, because this baby brings in all the bees. Now, Comfrey is my secret weapon. Well, not so secret weapon. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know why I love Comfrey so much and why I always have it in my garden and why I recommend that every gardener have it in their garden. On top of the fact that it is a great pollinator attractor, Comfrey is a big, beautiful plant that will fill out space. It's just pretty to look at when it's in flower. It has hundreds of medicinal purposes as well, but it's also one of the best sources of natural fertilizer that you can get for your garden. Imagine something that can improve all of your yields on any plant that you use it on, that you can grow yourself in your garden. So behind me right here in the center is our asparagus bed. Newly moved this last fall, so I'm not expecting much out of it. I did get a couple little stalks that came up that we left. I do have other annual plants in there, shallow root plants like some basil. I do have a Brussels sprout in there, and I have some dill in there just because I don't want this to be a wasted space this year. Not all of the asparagus came up, and even if it did, I'm not going to harvest it this year. So I will use the space this year for other things, but eventually this will be our established asparagus bed. Inside the asparagus bed is my garlic spot. Same spot every year. Garlic actually likes to grow in the same spot every year. If you replant it in the same bed, it's one of the few vegetables that are like that. And in truth, I have done so, and I do see marked improvements. My bulbs are larger each year. This is our 4th year planting in this bed, and I'm kind of excited. These garlics look amazing. We still got a couple months to go before we harvest, but it's getting close. Behind me over there, I have a new thing that I'm trying in my garden this year, and that's leeks. I love eating leeks. I finally learned how to properly put them in your garden so you don't have to worry about blanching them. And it looks as though it's actually working, and we're going to get a nice harvest. You can probably also see I've stuck a few little okra plants in here. They will not compete with each other. Once the leeks come out, I'll have okra up in here. Over here in this corner, this was our sweet potato bed last year. I did just sweet potatoes in this entire arch, but because I have the sweet potato bed over there, I only did this bed with sweet potatoes this year. And then this, I put peppers in. So it's mostly bell peppers. There's a couple sweet peppers in this corner. I do have some flowering kale on the corners, and I've got some borage over here to attract some pollinators. And then I have a new arched trellis over these two, which, look, they're coming up there. I've got some silver slicer cucumbers coming up on this side. And then over here, I have butterfly peas. And then I've got one little sunflower coming up right there in the corner. We got all our plant starts here. We have a sale coming up next week. So behind me right here, we have all of our plant starts that are for sale on our corner rack. This is still the original rack that we had. We are going to upgrade this, but as of right now, this one serves the purpose. It is our road-facing rack. I'm gonna get some little flags or some signs or something, but people can just pull up, come up here. They can buy plant starts right now, and as the season progresses, we'll have vegetables and things up there. We're also going to be moving a little cooler out here to have eggs in for people to purchase. We have our big sale is coming up in a couple weeks. We'll be out for the weekend at our local swap meet, and hopefully most of these babies will be gone, and I'll have space to start putting up produce for sale. Now, another thing that we did this year, because we have the new front space cleaned up, was I finally got to build some of my permanent garden space, display space here. So this is my little succulent rock garden corner. It's filling out quite nicely and I really like it. So we got sedums and lots of succulents in there. I've got some naked lady lilies that naturally come up along the stairs there. On the corner here is my little mint bowl. I've got some different little primroses and succulents, sedums growing all in here, alyssum, and then of course my strawberry wall. And we got some strawberry blessings over here too. Super excited about that. This is another little mint plant in a pot. Always put your mint in a pot. So right down here is an experiment I'm doing this year, and this is my corn. It is almost ready to go in the ground. I'm sure you've heard from myself and from many other gardeners that corn really doesn't like to be transplanted, and that's true. The way that the roots form on corn, it's really best to direct seed it wherever you're going to grow it. However, here we have a problem with critters, including chickens, that like to come out and pull out the fresh, tender baby corn. So I had a real hard time getting it going last year. And then someone suggested to me, if you have a plug tray, not a planting tray, but a plug tray. So you see how small those little spots are? If you have a plug tray, you can put an individual corn in the plug tray, and then when it's time and it's big enough to go out in the garden, you just pop that entire plug out, and there's no disturbing the roots, and you can actually transplant it into the garden when it's big enough to survive the damage and ravages of birds and the local wildlife. So that's what we're doing this year with our corn, and we've actually got this spot right here underneath the silage tarp, which is just about ready to be pulled back and be planted up with our cornfield. Now also, as I've been filming, you probably noticed behind me in a few shots that we have another whole new space in our garden. Another crop that is a really good crop to have as a homesteader, or if you're being self-sufficient with your food, is potatoes. But that also, unfortunately, has been another crop that has been a little bit of a challenge for us here on our homestead because of the type of land that we have. So as you all know, we own an old school property. Most of the land was fill, and it's not clean fill. So we've been combating a lot with clay and rock and broken glass and all kinds of things that have just accumulated in the hard packed soil in this area. Unfortunately, we haven't had good luck with potatoes, but we did come up with a plan this year. So we got super lucky, and our local hardware store was selling these big giant fire rings, which, as you can see, make perfect little garden beds. Now, yes, there's a lot of weeds in there. That's just the soil that we used, but there's also an abundance of potatoes. So all of these beds are filled up with potatoes this year. We also have some big tree buckets that we've used. So every single thing that you see here is going to have potatoes in it. And then this is a little experiment that my husband's doing. This is a bed that he built with salvage materials. This is old barn tin, and these are just some cedar trees that we picked. We also have potatoes in this bed. Hopefully this year we will have a good yield of potatoes, because I know for a fact they'll grow just fine in those. I've started actually selling my loose leaf teas and my herbal teas, so I've kind of moved and increased the space for growing different things that I use in my tea blends. I do have this green stalk here. It's filled with a bunch of different herbs and things. Then I have my big herb bed that is dead center in my garden right here. It's my favorite little spot in the garden, and it just is amazing to walk past. And of course, on either side of the tea garden are my tomatoes. So we've got bed number 1, which is all my fancy colored tomatoes. I've got some Dr. Wychees in here. I've got some Mr. Stripeys. I've got orange jazz and pink jazz. Put a Brussels sprout on the end, and I've got some marigolds and basil growing in the middle. And on this side are my red tomatoes. So I've got Arkansas Travelers, I've got some Mariglobes, and I believe I have Moneymaker in here. So these 2 beds are just for our personal use garden, and they're also in our show garden. So we've got our reds and we've got our colors. There's about 25 plants in these 2 beds combined, and that's more than enough tomatoes to do everything that I need to do with my tomatoes. I did actually find a local farmer's market that I like a lot better than the one I was at a couple years ago. It's much more foot traffic and much more people there actually for produce as opposed to arts and crafts. So we have been twice. It's been fairly lucrative. So I am going to slowly get back up into the market gardening this year. So I will have a large plot of tomatoes growing just for using for the market garden as well. Now, I had a little bit to finish up on it today. I know I didn't record actually putting it together. We kind of started a little while ago and I just didn't have time. But I'm going to show you we have one more addition space to our garden. Actually, quite a lot of addition to our garden. So we've got behind me here is the big main garden that we've used for the last couple years. It's our personal use kitchen garden, as well as my showcase garden that we have for the farmers market and sale booth. But now I have a big in-ground garden space where we have our corn growing. I have our Blackberry Trellis. This is this beautiful fence that he made for me. It's hard to see, but it's got cables hanging in there. And we've got our blackberries woven through that, which are actually starting to flower already, and I'm excited. And then we have behind me here our patch. I just hilled it up, and we've got all of our corn planted in. I've got 4 rows of field corn, and I'm putting the tomatoes in right now. That's actually going to be just extra tomatoes for market and stuff like that. Just got the cattle panel put up today, and the other thing that you may notice, because this does continue on down into the field, I didn't want to put a fence on it because they get cumbersome and they just get covered in weeds around here because it's too hard to weed around the fence. But I can't leave this space open to the field, especially because it's growing corn, and this is going to be a 3 sisters garden. So we're doing corn, squash, and some type of runner bean. So the corn is very, very sensitive, and I did not want the rabbits and the squirrels and things to come in and pick my corn. So we actually ran an electric line around this garden. We've got our solar charger right there, and you got all the way around this little garden. You can kind of see it back there. We've got a little electric line. And I know that doesn't seem like much, but it's about 4 or 5 inches off the ground, and it's perfect for just deterring rabbits and squirrels from coming in and eating my corn crops. We'll keep our eyes on this garden and see how it goes. This will be actually the first year that I feel like I'll be successful growing in ground on this property. One more little thing. So you may have noticed this little garden bed right here. You may be asking yourself, well, why is that there? Well, we're actually going to extend it out a little bit further, And that is there to be a little wildflower, annual flower, pollinator spot, pretty spot, because right there is my greenhouse. So this is our line to our well. Right in this space here is going to be my garden shed for all my tools and my pots. And then I'm going to have all the in-ground garden here, and then I'm going to have this raised garden bed where I can put sunflowers and other types of annual flowers, things that look pretty and just attract pollinators. And then this is the foundation for my new greenhouse. It's not a high tunnel, it's an actual greenhouse, so I can actually heat it. I have looked into different options of doing so. We are going to use it for starting seeds in here, but it's also going to house some of my tropical plants like bananas. My giant elephant ear will go in here. We're going to put ginger and turmeric in here, and maybe possibly a citrus tree or two. I haven't decided, but I'm very excited. I've had that greenhouse kit in storage for about 6 years now, and we've finally been able to get the space cleared and leveled, and we can get it going and get it built. And this weather that we've had the last couple days and we'll continue to have for the next couple days is perfect for working on a project like this, because it's overcast, it's a little chilly, and it's a little rainy, and it's just wonderful. So that's our new section of garden that we've got going on, and I'm so glad and excited that I get to show it to you guys. I'm sorry that I didn't actually get to film putting it together, but like I said, there's been a whole bunch of other things going on in our lives. We are back, and I will be doing weekly updates, and we get to watch this garden grow together. If you guys have any questions, any types of plants that you want me to focus on, feel free to leave a comment down below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Help us get back into the sights of the algorithm. We'll be doing a lot more foraging videos. I have one actually that I'm putting together right now. I found a really awesome mushroom that I can't wait to share with you guys. So keep your eyes out, hit subscribe to follow along, and come walk with us and get your hands dirty.